As I said in my last video, I wanted to spend some time playing around with the expensive version of Strongbox farming. And in this video, I've actually kind of done two strategies, two for the price of one here. Hi, it's Lerald, and I'm going to be talking about the high cost version of Strongbox farming and kind of give some thoughts on it, some tips on it, and kind of run through doing it in both tier 16 maps and tier 17 maps, talk about the strengths and weaknesses of each, and we'll just kind of run through all of that right now. So let's start once again, kind of as always, with what makes this currency farming strategy special and why it's so good. And I think the best way to really kind of show that off is, also I was looking up like how old are Strongboxes, right? This is a personal favorite, a favorite of a lot of people. And this is from 2014. It's crazy how old this strategy is. I mean, 10 years old, pretty close to it, and actually still pretty good. Holds up pretty well. So as we look here at the Wealthy Exile for one of these sets of farming, this is actually the tier 16 map set. It's about 45 divines from 20 maps. That's pretty good. About 20 divines of that is in raw currency, 10 is in divination cards, 5 divines is in maps, about 3 in Scarabs. I did actually find 2 very valuable Allflame Embers in that set. So in any case, the point here is that over half of the stuff that we're farming is either straight up currency or div cards that we can either sell very easily or literally just hand in for stuff that can sell very easily. Or like also currency. A bunch of fortunate cards in here, for example. If we look at the other set, the tier 17 set, I think the more profitable of the two sets, again, about 65 divines in the span of only 10 maps, so over 6 divines a map, pretty good. And we're not looking at anything that's hard to liquidate here. About half of it is raw currency. About the other half of that is a combination of div cards and Scarabs and then and boss fragments. So all very, very easy to sell. If I actually look at these two tabs here, which I have named very helpfully Fortress Dump and T16 Dump, I got a Cosprey's Malice in each of them. I got a Cosprey's Malice in my very first map and a Cosprey's Malice in my very last map. Don't know why it worked out like that. I got a Facebreaker from a Void card, a double corrupted Facebreaker that I don't think is worth anything, but you know, hey, that's cool. And, you know, then a bunch of raw divines in both strategies, 15 raw divines in the span of only 10 tier 17 maps feels pretty good. And 8 raw divines in the span of 20 tier 16 maps, also pretty good. We also got a lot of fortunate cards. Like I said, I think it's 20 fortunate cards in 20 maps. Nice, pretty great. And then a lot of the risk cards, a lot of home cards between the two, 3 home cards in one strategy, and I feel like there's 2 of them around here somewhere in the other one. Just a lot of like really easy to liquidate stuff, and I think that's pretty satisfying. I do think initially I have like some thoughts. I'll kind of tell the story of doing the sets of tier 17 maps because those were a little bit more up and down in terms of like fun, not fun, fun, not fun. But for the tier 16 maps, the whole set of 20 maps, super fun the whole way through. Start to finish, had a great time. Every single map I really enjoyed. There was one little weird quirk in running the 20 tier 16 maps. I don't know how I did it. Somehow I accidentally put in a Glacier map for one of my maps. I was running Corrupted 8 mod. I wanted to do 10 Corrupted 8 mod Dunes and then 10 Corrupted 8 mod Jungle Valley to see if one was a little faster than the other, felt a little better or anything. And somehow I accidentally put in a Corrupted 8 mod Glacier that I had pulled out of a Strongbox, and I wound up running that map full to end, full clear of the map in I think 2 minutes and 10 seconds. It was wildly fast, and although I don't necessarily recommend running Glacier as your map of choice over like Dunes or Jungle Valley because Glacier doesn't have any good div cards on it at all. And as you can see from the 19 maps that I did of Dunes and Jungle Valley that drop fortunate cards, I did get over 1 fortunate card per map. I got 20 in 19 maps, so I do think that is kind of a lost revenue stream by running Glaciers, but it is an option. Glacier is a really, really fast map, so if you just wanted to absolutely speed through the maps, Glacier's pretty cool. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at my spreadsheet as well here, and this is the tier 17 map breakdown. And my initial estimate on the amount of time I thought I would spend in each map was about 15 minutes, which is pretty long, but you really do spend a long period of time kind of resetting the strong boxes over and over again, because you're getting about 30 to 40 strong boxes per map, potentially more. And they can take a while. Sometimes they will sit there and just spawn guys over and over and over again, and you'll click them again and again and again. And sometimes you won't get anything. You'll just sit there and click and kill a massive wave of guys, nothing. And you'll do that like 7 times in a row and you'll get nothing. But then there are times where you might get 2 divines out of one set and then a couple of home cards, or as I did in the tier 17 maps, a couple of immortal cards, which are worth anywhere from 10 to 20 divines each. I know Wealthy Exile is evaluating them at 10 each. I think that's on the lower end, but they'll sell quickly at that price, I'm sure. So in any case, I feel like I made considerably over 20 divines per hour running the tier 17 maps, and that is actually assuming kind of the very highest end on the time span spent in each map. So on the very first map, I got the Lantern of Arimor modifier that makes it so that rare packs are accompanied by a map boss. And so I put that on the top pack because I thought like, hey, that'll be pretty interesting. I might get to kill like 100, 150 map bosses in this map. And what I didn't realize until several maps later when I ran into it again and kind of realized what I had done here is I also had a terrible mod on the map, kind of a build disabling mod. I don't know if I have it on any of my mods, but because I was playing the Forbidden Right Pathfinder at the time, a poison build, it had the modifier that makes debuffs expire on monsters much, much faster, and so it was significantly reducing my ability to deal damage. I just didn't realize that applied to poison. I can only assume it does because I ran into that modifier later with no other sort of interesting mods, and I cleared through the map just fine. It was like a pretty quick clear, but then I got to the map boss, and it took about 2 or 3 minutes to kill that map boss. And so for all of the map bosses in that very first map that I did that had that map modifier on it that I didn't realize was like so build disabling, it took over 20 minutes to clear that map. But then on average after that, all of the other maps that I ran into only took about 10 to 12 minutes to clear, except for one, the 6th map that I ran, which had Harbingers on it. And I knew to shove the Harbinger modifier to the very bottom of the Lantern of Arimor options. And so I did that, and that one was not as bad. But again, I think that map took about 17 or 18 minutes. So I had one outlier that really took like 22 or 23 minutes, one that took about 17, one that took like 14 because of the debuffs expiring faster, and then all the rest were in the 10 to 12 range. So on average, I actually think that this took a little under 15 minutes, and I definitely think if you didn't screw up and do any bad debuffs like I did, and if you maybe, like if you see Lantern of Arimor throwing Harbingers at you, you might just want to skip those entirely, because I have unfortunately had to do a couple of maps that had that. And the Harbingers take forever. They're not modified by any Harbinger nodes. They are just baseline Harbingers. You have to kill all of the Harbingers to get the Strongbox to open. And they just take forever. And I think I've never gotten anything more valuable from the Harbingers or the map bosses than like 1 chaos in terms of reward. So not great. I think in reality, if I were to like completely optimize all of the bad conditions away, not run anything that was like wrong, I think that 12 minutes is probably a more realistic number for what I would be hitting in terms of time per map. And so I think I would be over 25 divines per hour, like optimized, really, really slamming very nicely. But at least for the set that I ran, I think it was about 14 to 15 minutes per map for my kind of still figuring out the optimization. And honestly, I still think that's pretty good. In terms of Allflame Embers that I used on my maps, the only thing I ever really used that was particularly interesting was there were a couple of times where I had Lantern of Arimor modifiers, and let's just go ahead and slap like a random map in here and see if I can get a nice Lantern of Arimor modifier. No, not really. So in any case, sometimes you'll get Lantern of Arimor modifiers. I talked about this in the previous video, where the modifier will be like strongest monster in a pack will drop stuff, maybe Cartographer's Chisels, or Chaos Orbs is ideal, Divine Orbs is ideal, and that really is, I think, what is the value here, the sort of main reason that you would want to do this strategy. I never got a Chaos Orb conversion monster in either of my maps, or either of my sets of maps, the tier 16s or the tier 17s. I never got any Chaos Orb conversion ones. I never got anything more valuable than like Cartographer's Chisels and Fusings. But I did get, in the tier 17 maps, I got One strongest monster converts items dropped into fusings. And as you can see, I got over 600 orbs of fusings just in that one map, just by slapping Allflame Embers of Anarchy onto that map. And Allflame Embers of Anarchy, the ones that give you Rogue Exiles, they're really not very expensive, and the Rogue Exiles really aren't that dangerous as long as you're not doing any sort of fancy other interactions with them. So again, over 600 fusings just from that one map. If that had been Chaos Orbs instead of fusing orbs, you know, that would be like 4 divines worth of chaos in a single map. That would be pretty good. Additionally, I also got one map in which I had strongest monsters convert their drops into cartographer's chisels in that tier 17 set, and I did the same thing. I put an Allflame Ember of Anarchy on there, and I got over 650 cartographer's chisels from that map as well. I also had, let me see here, I believe it was one map that had monsters have a chance to drop orbs of unmaking in the tier 17 set, and I'd put frogs on that for the same exact reason, and over 200 orbs of unmaking in the tier 17 set as well. Now in the tier 16 set, things were a little bit different. I had 2 different times where I had the strongest monster in a pack drops orbs of fusing, so I used Allflame Embers on those, and I got a lot of orbs of fusing out of that. The same exact philosophy, just expanded out to give me, you know, over a guaranteed 6 links worth of fusings. And then I didn't have anything fancy with chisels in the tier 7 or tier 16s, as you can see, under 100 chisels, but I did get multiple maps in which I had monsters have a chance to drop orbs of unmaking. And so I slapped frogs on those as well. Again, massive amounts of orbs of unmaking, of orbs of fusing, of cartographer's chisels. All of these suboptimal. The goal really would be to get chaos orbs, obviously. That's the plan. And I think that really is kind of the basic philosophy that I've kind of come to terms with here for Ambush, which is that it is a gamble strategy, but it's not a bad gamble. It's a good gamble. As you can see, I'm making over 20 divines an hour in the tier 17 strategy, over 20 divines an hour doing tier 17s. If we look at the tier 16s, I'm also making over 20 divines an hour. This is doing this, I thought it would be about 5 minutes a map. I actually thought it wound up being a little bit less. I knew it would be slower than the standard ambush strategy where you're only putting like 11 or 12, or I guess, what is it, 17 strongboxes into your maps at a time. By using the ambush Scarabs of Containment, you're getting like 35 strongboxes on average into every single map. So I knew that this would take longer with how many more resets you're getting on the strongboxes. So I ran the tier 16 set on the Toxic Rain Pathfinder set of the Forbidden Right one, since it's a little bit more zoomy. It's been kind of nice. Zip zooming around. It was a little, you know, it was less tanky, didn't kill as fast, but that doesn't really matter in tier 16s. And ultimately, the profitability actually came out to be very similar, like shockingly similar when I initially just kind of estimated how much time I thought it was taking. But then once I sort of like looked at what I think the optimized time per map would be, I thought it would be probably more like 12 minutes per map in doing tier 17s if you're really optimizing nicely, and probably more like 4 minutes per map when you're optimizing really well for tier 16s, which does again put them really close in terms of profitability. Now, obviously, there's always going to be some RNG. There's also always going to be shifts in price, but I think a lot of this stuff really does wind up like, we're pretty deep into a league. I think the supply of this stuff is pretty high, so even if a lot of people start trying to run this type of strategy, I think there's not going to be that much variance. There's just so much of a supply, and nothing in this strategy is really that expensive. The most expensive thing is the tier 17 map and the tier 17 strategy. And then in the tier 16 strategy, it's just the Scarab of Containment. So I should actually show off the setup that I'm using here. It is very similar to the same setup as I was using before. The only thing I changed was for tier 16s, I saw a comment that made sense and seems right, that if you run Concealed Logistics, if you run Cartographer Strongboxes, you can get tier 17s out of your Cartographer Strongboxes. You know, your tier 16 maps can drop and convert into tier 17s. And then if they do, they can duplicate. So you can get 2 for the price of 1. Sounds like a pretty sweet deal. So I did run these. I didn't get a single tier 17 in the span of 20 maps, but I did get a lot of double corrupted, or I should say, duplicated 8 mod corrupted dunes and toxic sewer maps out of running cartographers strongboxes, so I actually do think they're worth it. And the only thing that I really gave up to get them was like these 2 points in Scarabs here, and then invasive adversaries, which I haven't ever really found that this actually added anything. I mean, it sounds good. 10% more monster packs that are difficult and rewarding. Sounds good. I've never noticed a difference in value. I think you could probably just drop 3 Scarab nodes along the way. Maybe you could drop trapping carapaces. That makes sense. And then there you go. Like, you know, a lot of Scarab stuff you could drop to just kind of justify picking up these 3 here. For tier 17 maps, I don't know that taking concealed logistics is as valuable because you can't get tier 17s to drop into tier 17, and your bags are usually pretty full. It usually would take me 2 or 3 times of zoning out or dying. That's a good way to get out of a tier 17 map, to go like dump everything into the dump tab and then jump back into the map. It usually would fill about 2 or 3 inventories in every single tier 17 map. And in terms of the other setup stuff, you know, we're doing blue Eldritch Altars as always for this type of a strategy, just because I like those more. And then I'll show off the 4 Scarabs that we're using. I'll actually like give them their own little bit of a section here. So we're not using the regular ambush Scarabs. The main focus of this, the sort of linchpin here, is ambush Scarab of containment, which makes it so that all of the monsters in the pack, most of the monsters in the pack, there are still some native monsters that'll exist in the map that won't be converted into strong boxes, but for the most part, all the packs of monsters in the map will be converted into strong boxes. This has a couple of effects. One, it makes it so that it's actually really easy to boss rush. I didn't do that in a tier 17 map, so it just seems very tedious to actually make your way all the way to the boss, especially considering I did the all fortress maps, and fortress is a bit like a maze, so I just kind of cleared my way straight through. Then after that, you want to use ambush Scarabs of discernment. This makes it so that the strong boxes are much more likely to be the rare varieties. So we're talking diviner strong boxes and arcanist strong boxes, ones that drop either divination cards or currency. And then I like to go with hidden compartments in this case because we're over 30 strong boxes in every single map guaranteed. So hidden compartments is mathematically much better than just adding another 5 strong boxes in terms of giving us more strong box opening chances. The math on this is a little wonky. Basically, you get 16% chance to reopen every strong box due to like these 4 passives here, this big one and then the 3 smallies. And then that adds together with this 15% chance to give yourself about 31% chance. So this 15% chance, you know, you can open a strong box and then reopen it and reopen it and reopen it, that sort of nested chance. It's something like around, just the Scarabs, around 20% chance to like 20% more strong boxes, basically. So I know that's not perfect math, but basically the math works out on that. So when you're in the like 20 to 25 range, it's pretty close to an ambush Scarab. Once you're over 25, this is way better. And for what it's worth, all of the Scarabs, all of the ambush Scarabs other than ambush Scarab of containment are all like 1 chaos or less in bulk. So they're all super cheap. The price difference doesn't really matter. And then finally, instead of using a regular ambush Scarab to get 5 more strong boxes, I went with ambush Scarab of potency. This makes it so that all of the explicit modifiers on the strong boxes. So we're talking things like 10 extra items contained in a strong box. Strong box contains 3 ambush Scarabs, 100 or 1500% increased quantity of items in the strong box. Like all of those type of modifiers are increased by 75%. This has a pretty significant increase on the amount of stuff that gets thrown out of the strong boxes. Is it better than getting 5 more strong boxes? I don't know. Maybe this is the kind of thing that you could test over the span of 10,000 maps and like a margin of error could wind up going either way. But I think with over 30, really over 35 strong boxes on average in every single map, I think that ambush Scarab of potency is worth it in that case, especially considering you're getting like a 31% chance every time you open a strong box to reopen it, thanks to hidden compartments and the passives. And then the odds of the strong boxes being of rarer variety is like pretty high. So I think this strategy works out really, really nicely with all of those. And then of course, as always, since we're doing an ambush strategy, we're going to put ambush on the map device. And that is basically all that accounts for the cost. As for the maps, you can do any tier 16 map. You can do any tier 17 map as well. I just like Fortress. I found a couple of things along the way in doing this. I found that I could face tank the tier 17 Fortress map boss on the Forbidden Right Pathfinder. Didn't realize that until I did it a couple of times while the boss had like shrine buff and while it was like possessed, and I was still just had like massive damage rolls on the map boss, and I was still just completely able to face tank it. So that felt pretty cool, being able to just totally face tank a boss that was really, really yapping on me. And then generally when I'm trying to roll the tier 17 maps, it's kind of the same philosophy that I've used in all the back to basics strategies I've used earlier in the league, which I have to say, the first couple of maps, like the first map that I did where I had all the map bosses and it was really taking a long time, I was very, very like ready to quit on this strategy immediately. I thought, you know, back to basics is definitely better. But after doing like a bunch more maps, I realized like, man, this strategy is a lot less difficult than back to basics. So I would say compared to back to basics, I think this is a lot less difficult. And I actually think it's more consistently rewarding than back to basics. Back to basics is very feast and famine. So I do roll the maps basically the same though. Like, let me look for a map here that sucks. Okay, perfect example of a map here that sucks. I'm not even looking at the mods at the bottom of the map. Like the bottom here, everything below where it says quality, I literally have my hand over my screen covering it. I see up above it says more maps and I don't see the words currency and Scarabs. I'm not looking at the rest of it. I don't care. I'm going to start out by looking at a map like this. I see more maps. That doesn't do anything for me. I see more Scarabs. That's cool. I see more currency. That's awesome. Then I look at the modifiers down below and see, can I handle these modifiers? And in my case, yeah, I think I can. This is going to be a map that kind of sucks because of the petrification statues and the grasping vines. It's really going to be annoying in conjunction with temporal chains. But this is a map I would try to run. And so that is kind of the philosophy I'm taking into all of the tier 17s. Now for the tier 16s, I'm basically just like using my standard reg X, and I am just like checking them, and then I'm just kind of making sure that they don't have like reduced aura effect, reduced regeneration, or recovery of life and energy shield, and reduced flask charges. And as long as they don't have those, I'm ready to rock. If I were playing the Forbidden Right build, I would also make sure that monster chance to avoid poisons isn't on there. And that's because, you know, we do have a lot of map mod effect on here. We've taken every single map mod node we can, all the quant we can, all the strongbox stuff we can, all the Lantern of Arimor, necropolis stuff that we want to have, all the scarab nodes, standard setup. But we're not taking back to basics, so there isn't that chance that, like, I don't know, everything is going to be 80% more powerful on top of all of the map mod effect that we're already getting, where now instead of like a minus 12 max all res roll gets converted to like a minus 20 max all res roll because of all the map mod effect, and then back to basics comes in and now it's minus 38 max all res to everything, and I'm walking around with 45 all res just getting my face blown in half. I'm not having to deal with that. That is kind of nice. So I do think this strategy has actually kind of eclipsed back to basics for me. I really didn't think it was going to after the first map or two. I thought, oh man, this is a nightmare. And then things really started to pick up and the profitability went way higher than I thought it would be. And the cost is relatively low. It's not back to basics low. In back to basics, everything is like a 1 chaos scarab, and that's kind of nice. And you're just running quant on the map, but you can go a while without getting any divine orbs in back to basics. And I would say, as you can see, like I got 15 raw divine orbs in the span of 10 maps doing this strategy in tier 17s. I got 8 raw divine orbs in the span of 20 maps doing this in tier 16s. I got a ton of tier 17 maps in doing this. I got a lot of nice divine orbs. I got some fun gems from gemlings that I put onto strongboxes. I only had one set of gemlings, but I threw those guys on. I got this 2120 Vol Lightning Strike. I had been thinking about a future build, and I decided I definitely wasn't going to play a Lightning Strike champion this league, and then this dropped on the very next map, and like, I don't know, maybe now, maybe. And then finally, I got 2 pretty useful Allflame Embers. I hadn't talked about Allflame Embers in terms of like cost and profitability and stuff. I don't sell Allflame Embers. I don't buy Allflame Embers. I farm them, I get them, I use them. I try to be like very SSF on the Allflame Embers, except for this one. This one is like a trip straight to the hospital to get your wrist replaced. What this one does is it makes it so that all of the monsters in that pack will be replaced with chaos orbs that roll around. They're like heads, and they look like chaos orbs. When you kill them, they drop either chaos orbs, exalted orbs, or vol orbs. And so the way that people will use this is they will use this strategy. They will use this ambush strategy, ambush scarab of containment. They will put as many ambush Scarab, ambush Strongboxes as they can into the map. They will slam through as many of these bad boys as they can, and every single one of them will drop a chaos or whatever. So if they're killing hundreds or thousands of them in a map, they can make several divines. The problem is you have to click hundreds or thousands of chaos orbs in a map, and that just sounds awful. I would rather sell it to somebody for 2 to 3 divines, and I have a human wrist. I don't have like a robot wrist, right? There's only so many clicks left in this wrist before it falls off and I die. So I don't want to waste those picking up chaos orbs in a map just for this stupid Allflame Ember. I'll let somebody else with younger wrists than me do that and arthriticize their wrist prematurely on my behalf. Allflame Embers of meat sacks, I think, are really the way that you would take this strategy and maximize the profits of it. Once you get a map, especially in the tier 17s, but honestly, even in the tier 16s, once you get a map that has the modifier strongest monster in the pack converts all of their armor or weapons or whatever into chaos orbs or divine orbs, or I had another one that popped up a couple of times in both the tier 16 and tier 17 runs. The strongest monster in the pack converts all items with rarity into divination cards. I got the head doctor out of that, which is hilarious because historically that would have been worth something, but not so much anymore. I think I got the artist the same way, and I definitely got some valuable cards out of that. I honestly cannot remember if I got the immortal cards off of strongest monster converting into div cards and then being duplicated by an Eldritch Altar, or if I just got them regular style from a Diviner Strongbox. Doesn't matter anymore. The point is that when you have one of those modifiers that makes the strongest monster in a pack convert stuff, the cheap version is Anarchy Allflames converting the monster packs into Rogue Exiles. That's the cheap version. It works pretty well. If you really want to ratchet the value up, the profitability up, you will use meat sacks. The problem with meat sacks, I think I have my overlay on, is they're about 2.5 divines each. So unless you're able to get chaos orbs at a minimum, or exalted orbs, or divine orbs if you're lucky, which I haven't seen a single divine orb Lantern of Arimor conversion yet, and I have done, I don't know how many maps this league, I don't know, but I know that I finished the achievement for doing thousands and thousands of maps a month ago. So a lot of maps, and I still haven't seen that. I would say the only thing that I would maybe consider gambling on is if I got the strongest monster converts items with rarity into divination cards. That might be the only one that I would be willing to gamble on with meat sacks. But I think generally speaking, you can probably either sell this to people who are willing to really do like super high juicing strategies in tier 17, or hang on to them and then use them specifically for when you get chaos conversion or exalted conversion or divine conversion. I think that is the play here. All right, so I know that's a lot about this strategy. I think the thing that really shook me and kind of surprised me the most here was just how profitable the tier 16s were. Like, even if we take out the Allflame Embers, if we look at that here, it's dump tab number 3. I made about 45 divines in the span of 20 maps. Okay, so like those Allflame Embers, they're nice. They're kind of a big get. But even if we cut those out, we're still over 40 divines in the span of 20 maps. That's really, really, really good. If we cut out the divination cards, that's still 35 divines in the span of 20 maps. Like, you can always claim RNG is a factor. I mean, it is. It's a video game. They're kind of built on that idea. But this is definitely a strategy that is a gamble strategy with a really, really high floor. I do think that 20 divines per hour is very reasonable to do, whether you're doing these in tier 16s or tier 17s. And the possibility for when you get a Chaos Conversion Lantern of Arimor modifier, the possibility of slapping either Anarchy Allflames or Meat Sack Allflames on that and really ratcheting it up into the more like 50 divine per hour range, at least for that one map, is very, very strong. I think if I had to recommend one of these two strategies, I would actually recommend the tier 16s, just simply because they're easier and faster. They're definitely not as profitable, and it's kind of up to you whether you think they're more fun or not. I kind of found the tier 17s to actually be a lot more fun than I thought they were going to be initially. Certainly the first map was not very fun, but then after that, they really did kind of become a lot more fun. I really enjoyed blasting the tier 17 map boss. There's also some kind of fun, interesting divination cards that you can get out of the tier 17, so that's cool as well. You know, I definitely got more raw currency out of the tier 17, so I can't really complain about that either. I think maybe the weirdest and most surprising thing was just how fast Glacier was as a map. I know it's a fast map, I just didn't expect for it to be half the amount of time spent on a dunes or on a jungle valley, so I think there's a very real possibility that playing around with doing this in Glacier, accepting the fact that you're not going to get fortunate cards from random monster drops, and just trying to run through these strong boxes in like 2 to 2.5 minutes per map is like, it's a very good idea. You could even skip the map boss, save yourself another 15 or 30 seconds with the map boss there, just do Glacier and just burn through Glacier maps as fast as humanly possible. I don't know how good that strategy could be. You know, that could be one that winds up being like 10 divines an hour or 40. And I do think it's probably a fun experiment to play around with that and see if you can really make that work. I think playing around with different maps like Glacier and just seeing, is there something that you can do 30, 35 strong boxes in the span of like 2 minutes? Sounds pretty fun. I really like this strategy a lot. I have been kind of blown away by just how good Ambush has been as a super low cost strategy and then as sort of like a medium investment strategy. And I do think that the ability to slap those Anarchy Allflame Embers or Meat Sack Allflame Embers on and really turn it into like a high cost, high reward strategy whenever you get lucky on the Lantern of Arimor is really, really cool. Okay, I think that pretty much covers it. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and thanks for watching. Bye.